But let me say something. That was a failure, but you are not a failure. So that episode or that season, that thing didn't go well, but you yourself are not a failure. So don't label yourself as a failure.
Hi, Wolfpack fans. It's Marcy Bullock with our guest today on Engineering Pack Pod, Ken Gregory, who has his Master of Science in Industrial and Systems Engineering from North Carolina State University, home of the Wolfpack, of course. And he, in previous roles, has served as Vice President of Customer Experience and Success and had a big stint at IBM. One of his roles was Senior Director of Strategy and Transformation. And he currently has an expertise in building trust with teams. He is also a fitness and grilling enthusiast. Hi, Ken.
Hey, Marcy, how are you today?
I'm doing well. I am delighted to have an opportunity to chat with you because as a faculty member here teaching our students, you have a lot of wisdom and a lot of lessons to share. So begin with your elevator pitch. If we met at a party, what would you say about yourself?
So at a party, I'd probably start with, I'm a husband to one and a father to two. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. First job was a paper carrier. That's where I learned that, cash is kind of important. You actually had to buy the paper before you delivered it. And then if you didn't collect any money, it was all your money. Got to go to Penn State. After Penn State, came down here. Worked for IBM for a long, long time. Over all that time, though, what I learned was the way you support a stakeholder, a customer, it's somewhat what I refer to as an all skate. Everybody has a role to play if they understand what it is. And so what I really like describing, telling people, quote unquote, my elevator pitch is, I'll help you solve your big core business challenges through a combination of customer advocacy, operational excellence, and employee engagement.
That's an important thing to share because many people have problems related to those issues. Mm-hmm. And this is your role currently as a consultant. Mm-hmm. So you are in charge of your own organization where you go and do that for people.
If they're willing, yes.
Yes, I love it. Well, this is great because in addition to teaching at NC State, you're doing your own private gig. And is this a second career for you?
You could call it that. I'm not quite on that second swing or whatever that's called in the book, Strength to Strength. I'm not sure what that path is called. But yeah, I'm certainly enjoying what I'm doing right now. I really, really enjoy NC State and I really enjoy helping people get better.
Yeah, helping people get better. And when you talked about having an expertise in trust building, that really intrigues me because trust seems to be the main thing that is important in a relationship. How do you work on that in companies and in a professional setting?
It depends on each company and it depends on where people are at. So you kind of try to start with where they're at. And what level of trust do they feel like they have? And it typically comes in three categories. Credibility is one, right? Do you say what you're going to do? Do you have a level of competence? If you say you're going to do it, can you do it pretty well? And third is the level of integrity that you have. Did you actually say something that was correct or accurate? And you put those combinations together, plus the idea of how well can you relate with somebody else? Can you actually get them to feel like, I have your back? Or I actually pay attention to what's important to you as opposed to what's important to me. How much value or how much service can you provide? That goes a long way to building trust. Once you build a trust, I like to call it a trust benefit or a trust tax. If you have trust, you'll go faster. That's your benefit. If you have a trust tax, you're going to slow down. Things are going to go slower. There's going to be a little bit more conflict and friction in terms of the way that we try and go around things.
I'm intrigued by that because in the work world, you do have to interact with so many different personalities. And is there one tip you would give an individual who is struggling with helping others understand they have their back? Like a special secret to how to do it?
I wish I did. My experience has kind of taught me to listen a lot more than you speak. Oftentimes, and I say oftentimes, probably more than 50%, if there's a scenario where they're struggling, trying to get the other person to kind of acknowledge that they really do have their back, that person's probably afraid of something. They might be afraid of losing something. It could be status, could be authority, could be autonomy. Could be something associated with metrics if it's in a business setting. It could be something of personal value, right? And if you can continue to explore and be curious and listen to just what's really important to them, then you change your narrative to match their level of importance, as opposed to you're a Mimi and it's all about what I want to do. That typically has not been very successful, at least not for me.
Well, you actually had a great answer to that. Even though you said you wish you had the magic wand for building trust, listening is hard to do because we tend to want to be, while someone's talking, thinking of what we'll be saying next. And I love that tip. Is there a scenario that comes to mind in your work, that a story maybe that you can share where this really helped out and broke through a barrier?
I can share one. It was back when I was in a procurement role, and we were trying to figure out how to, I'll call it, save money between my supplier and myself. And you get tips for negotiation around don't fill silence with noise. And so if somebody's saying something and then it breaks, you don't have to fill that gap with thoughts. You can reflect. But what was really interesting was because of the supplier buyer dominant matrix, right? In theory, we had the idea we could tell the supplier what to do. What I experienced was if I listened to how the company wanted to make money, and I understood how they wanted to be measured, and I understood what was important to them in context of the relationship that they had with my company, we could craft a relationship where we could hit their objectives and my objectives. So I could walk away with my savings objectives. They could walk away with their profit objectives and their revenue objectives. And it built a level of strength around our relationship in multiple different avenues. It wasn't just supply. It wasn't just technical. It wasn't just development. It wasn't just delivery. It was a lot of components put together where we could all kind of lift each other up. And everybody kind of walked away. Now, it wasn't easy and it wasn't always perfect, but listening to the way they wanted to accomplish it gave me ideas in terms of how we could accomplish it together.
Fantastic. Listening. Ooh, that's so basic, but not. It's one of those things where it's like, it's simple, but it's not that easy.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear you share a little bit about your thoughts on failure. I know that is a word that a lot of perfectionists want to avoid. They want to not make mistakes or stumble. Is that reality?
I think, again, it depends on I think it depends on several things. Could be how you operate personally, what your own operating model is. It could be the organization that you're a part of. It could be the environment and the community you're in. I've been fortunate or unfortunate to fail many times, but there's one where if somebody asks me if I've ever failed, I'll tell them the story. It's a scenario where I was sent to Latin America and Brazil to run the operations for the end of a quarter. And it was a really, really big quarter. It was a time when Brazil, India, China, those markets were booming. And so we had an expectation that we were going to ship about 130,000 things in one day. And our IT imploded and we shipped 30. So the idea of going down there and watching it fail was disappointing. You could call it a failure. And I had what I consider to be an enlightened leader that I worked with at the time. And this person said, look, you took a risk and in theory you failed. Now you have a choice. You can be part of the solution or you can go back to the regular job because you were sent there on a temporary assignment. What do you want to do? So I'm ready to be part of the solution. So I spent about 9 months going back and forth. We were slowly getting things back together. And at the end of that, the next version of that conversation was, okay, so now you helped it get back together. You're not going to get a good performance review this year. But let me say something. That was a failure, but you are not a failure. So that episode or that season, that thing didn't go well, but you yourself are not a failure. So don't label yourself as a failure. The second thing is look at what you accomplished in the 6 to 9 months you were together with a group of people. Whatever you had people willing to work until 3 and 4 in the morning with you. Whatever you had people who used to say, I don't want to work in that organization, but they really do want to come in this organization now. So whatever you're doing, you're connecting with people. So combination of don't label yourself and think about how relationships and how you can get things done together where you can get more done as a community than you can by yourself.
And people wanting to work till 3 a.m. is not an easy thing to get happening in a culture. Do you think that was relationship building? What was it about the way you did it that motivated those people?
I helped. I don't know if this is the answer, but this is the answer I'll share. You'd have to ask them to give you what they'd really think. But what I would say, we spent a lot of time talking about why what we do matters. And so in this particular role, it was what we referred to as fulfillment. It was pre and post-sale support, very, very heavy transactional kind of activity. You weren't necessarily talking directly to a client. But what we were doing, we were helping banks, which then helped people get loans. We were helping construction companies build hospitals. Right? So we helped them recognize that there's more to the end result than just the piece of paper got pushed across the desk or the click that you put on the computer. And once we started understanding and feeling like we had a relative contribution to the mission and the value of the company, it was fun to watch, right? It was the second element was that as a team, we celebrated any little victory we could. And so as we started to gamify things, if you want to use that phrase, we started to come together more as I'll call it as a team, like you hear about in sports. And so that was really fun as we started to come together and realize some of us had strengths, some of us had other strengths, and we could leverage each other's strengths to get things done. It all kind of came together. I don't know if I have the silver bullet for that, but that's kind of how that particular season worked.
Yeah, I mean, I think the why is a big part of it. People felt connected to a bigger mission that made a difference, and they cared about that, and they all came together as part of a team. And these relationships that you're building makes me think about mentors and people in our lives that have influenced us in positive ways. Is there a mentor for you that stands out, and any advice that you remember learning?
I'm very fortunate. I have I've had several mentors, and I still have several mentors. But there's one story that does stand out, and this was a scenario where very, very senior leader, the company had just obtained a new CEO, and the new CEO had come to the location as part of the welcome tour, and they were having lunch, and the CEO was tasked with turning around the company, and he took one bite of his lunch and he slapped his silverware on the table and he said, "Okay, what do we need to do?" And the person to his left is where he started, didn't have what this mentor would describe as constructive commentary. It was more of still, we're welcoming, we're happy to have you kind of commentary. And so he gave the room a small speech. He said, "Team, look, I'm brand new here. I got a lot of experience, but so do you. I don't know how all this works. So I'm really looking to learn. So I'm going to ask you this again. And if you don't have a really good answer, then maybe I got the wrong people in the room." Now, this mentor happened to be sitting, if you were looking at a circular table, say the CEO was sitting at 12 o'clock, this person was sitting at 6 o'clock. She had something to say. But what it reminded her was, when somebody asks you your point of view, share it. You probably have something of value to share, and don't be afraid to share it. You earned your seat at the table, so share it.
That can be intimidating when you're feeling like everybody's looking at me, and what if I say the wrong thing, and worrying about comparing yourself and judging. And I think part of that relates to confidence, is just believe that what you're thinking is worth hearing and that you're worthwhile. Have you ever had reverse mentoring go on, where maybe you are the professor or the boss and you're learning something from a person who's on the team with you?
Yeah, all the time. There is one that I like to share with folks, though. There was an individual that I worked with that I grew up in big corporate communities, like IBM. This person had grown up in small startup companies. Still relatively less tenure in the career, but not significantly. But at the same time, wise as it relates to dealing with certain scenarios. So we happen to have a big project that we're working on. We were trying to figure out, you were talking about building trust, and what if you have somebody that is maybe not playing along quite as constructively as you want. But this person just kind of step back and ask the question, should we take a no from somebody who's not authorized to say yes? So it was a good step back and reflect of, okay, we're dealing with somebody that's on the team. That's great. Is the person truly in a position to make the decision, or do we need to go someplace else to get the true authority? And in bigger organizations, sometimes that's a valid question. Sometimes if you're in sales, that's a valid question. Are you talking to the decision maker that's actually going to, buy the product that you have to offer? Are you talking about, to the person that's truly going to make the decision about spending any kind of money? So that was actually a really good reminder that I carry with me for a long time.
Right. And you got that from a junior person who had some wisdom that you were able to take. And I think a lot of students who are starting their career paths are considering that transition to the work world. You have a triangle, right? A little bit of a visual that you could share with our listeners about the whole process of the work world success.
I do. Another mentor of mine shared with me just one of the ways that he looks at how he built his career. And it was one of the things he would tell anybody he was mentoring. So he had a triangle. And if you think at the top of the triangle that you're, let's say that's your ultimate job. And that can change over time. Maybe that's 5 years from now. Maybe that's 10 years from now. Or maybe that's the CEO. Whatever it is for you, it can change. But the second thing he said was, think about this triangle and you put vertical lines through it and then you put horizontal lines through it. And each square is a different role. And you're probably somewhere at the bottom. Maybe you're in the bottom left, maybe you're in the bottom right, but somewhere in the bottom of that triangle. How do you want to get to the top of your triangle? Right? And each role is a different experience. What are all the experiences that you want that's going to actually elevate you and give you the knowledge that you need and the capability and experiences that you need to get to the top of that triangle? You typically won't go up one side of the triangle because you won't know enough of the rest of the area. Second is you probably won't go by the role or the path you design. There's going to be opportunities that come along that you may not foresee. And you may have to think about, well, will that experience actually help me? So he helped, and he kind of boiled it down to any next role, you want to lead with a strength and then feed your curiosity. And when you do those two things, you're going to keep broadening your base, but you're also going to get deeper when you lead with a strength. And so you'll have this combination, what some people refer to as T skills. Some people refer to them as M skills, where you're deep and a few and you're broad enough to help, become, I'll call it a different level of leader, whether that be in a technical role or a business role or a personnel management role. But that was the kind of triangle that he described. And it's a pretty easy visual to look at, and it's pretty easy to recognize there can be many, many paths up to the top of that triangle.
Yeah, there's not one way that you have to go. So leading with your strength, I think, is a big thing that I agree with too, because that's where your shoulders are broadest and you feel great about yourself. And what is your strength that you like to lead with?
I do think that if I were to describe to folks what my strength would be, it would be around building up teams. So I get energy from really three things. One is building up teams, developing teams, helping them realize this is how they can be challenged. This is how they can get better. So I'm probably most ultimately proud of the team members that I've helped get promoted in some way, shape, or form. The second thing I really enjoy doing is I love connecting dots across what I refer to as ecosystems or enterprises. So that idea that I shared earlier is that we all kind of have a role to play when we think about what we're trying to accomplish. I feel like I'm pretty good at helping different organizations or different groups of people realize how they contribute. And the last thing I like to do is I like to build things that are sustainable and not personality based. So what some people refer to that as, I like working myself out of a job. Mm-hmm. The point is, you don't have to be there. It'll continue to run. And the second thing is you're helping somebody that come behind you that can elevate them, right? And so you're always providing opportunity for others. So I'd say those are the three things that I would say I'm pretty strong at.
And it's important for people to reflect on that, what energizes them. And you have a very clear view of that. And you have to let go of your ego to be able to walk away and say, oh, good, now this is just running without me. That's hard to do.
It's very hard to do. And you're never going to see a scenario where you think it's perfectly finished. There's always more to do to something to keep making it go.
That's very true. As we wind down the podcast, Ken, I would love you to get in my time machine. Are you willing to jump in?
I can try.
All right, let's do it. We are going to travel to the year 2035. So we're going a decade ahead. You will be older and wiser, I believe, in 10 years. And Ken Gregory of the future is coming back to you today to give you advice. What do you need to hear from him?
I wasn't expecting this question. So 10 years from now, well, I'll tell you what I hope I'd hear. I would tell you that I hope that I hear that you've made your wife proud. You've raised 2 beautiful kids that are thriving, competent, contributing members of society and to other people. But I think the other thing that I think he'll tell me is, you're not done yet. You haven't peaked yet. There's still lots to do, a lot of people to help, a lot of places to go. So keep at it.
Great way to conclude. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. It was great to be here.